and the Millionaire, the choice we have every moment. A few years ago, I wrote an audiobook called The Wimp and the Millionaire. At the time, I saw it as a way of describing two very different forces that exist within each of us. Today, with artificial intelligence transforming what is possible, I see the idea more clearly than ever. The wimp and the millionaire are not two different people. They are two different ways of responding to the same moment. The wimp is the part of us that hesitates. The millionaire is the part of us that acts. The wimp is afraid of failure, rejection, embarrassment, uncertainty, and loss. The wimp wants guarantees before taking action. The millionaire understands that guarantees rarely exist. He evaluates the risk, considers the potential reward, prepares as intelligently as possible, and then acts. And we get to choose between them constantly. The wimp is not a person. It is a pattern. When I use the word wimp, I don't mean that someone is weak as a person. I mean that we all have a tendency towards self-protection. The wimp says, maybe later. I'm not ready. I need to learn more. What if it doesn't work? What will people think? I'll wait until the timing is better. Sometimes those thoughts are legitimate. There are risks that should not be taken. There are situations where caution is intelligent. But there is another kind of caution. The kind that Sometimes those thoughts are legitimate. There are risks that should not be taken. There are situations where caution is intelligent. But there is another kind of caution, the kind that disguises fear as rational thinking. We research endlessly. We prepare endlessly. We think endlessly. And eventually we discover that preparation has become a substitute for action. That is the wimp. The millionaire is not about money. The millionaire in my framework is not necessarily a person who already has $1 million. The millionaire is an identity expressed through behavior. He is the part of us that says, let's figure out how. What is the opportunity? What is the downside? What is the upside? How can I reduce the risk? What would make this possible? And ultimately, let's do it. The millionaire is not reckless. He doesn't take every risk. He takes calculated risks. That's an important distinction. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the willingness to act when fear is present. Fear makes you hesitate. There is a line associated with Bodhi, the character played by Patrick Swayze in Point Break, about fear and hesitation. Fear causes hesitation, and hesitation can cause the very thing you fear to happen. That idea captures an important psychological phenomenon. Fear can create a self-reinforcing cycle. Fear, hesitation, weaker action, poor result, confirmation of fear, greater fear next time. Imagine someone who wants to start a business. They are afraid they will fail, so they hesitate. Because they hesitate, they don't contact customers. Because they don't contact customers, they don't get customers. Then they conclude, see, I knew it wouldn't work. The experience strengthens the wimp. The next opportunity arrives, and the wimp has even more evidence to use against action. But the cycle can work in the opposite direction. Fear, calculated assessment, action, experience, confidence, stronger action. Every courageous action gives you another piece of evidence that you are capable of acting. You begin to build a different identity. Where there's a will, there's a way. We have all heard the expression, where there's a will, there's a way. But I have come to believe the opposite is also true. Where there's a way, there's a will. This is especially important. Sometimes people don't lack willpower. They lack a way forward. If someone tells you, just do it, but you genuinely don't know how to do it, telling yourself to be courageous isn't very helpful. The millionaire asks a different question. How can I create a way? Can I break the problem into smaller pieces? Can I find someone who knows how? Can I use technology? Can I automate part of it? Can I delegate part of it? Can I experiment? Can I create a simpler version? Can I find 10 different ways to accomplish the same objective? The moment you can see a way, the exercise of willpower becomes easier. That is why creativity is closely connected to courage. When you create a way forward, you create a path for your will to travel on. AI changes the equation. This is why I believe the wimp and the millionaire concept has become even more relevant in the age of artificial intelligence. People are amazed by AI. They should be. But I think we should also be amazed by the potential of the human brain. For most of human history, if you wanted to accomplish something difficult, you needed to acquire enormous amounts of specialized knowledge yourself. You needed to learn programming to build software. You needed to understand design to create certain visual assets. You needed to know how to conduct research. You needed to understand marketing. You needed to know how to write. You needed to learn how to analyze data. You needed to find experts. Today, AI can dramatically lower the barriers to many of these activities. It can explain, it can research, it can brainstorm, it can write, it can code, it can analyze, it can organize, it can help you build. AI doesn't eliminate the need for human intelligence. In many cases, it makes the question of how much human intelligence we have been leaving unused even more interesting. The new bottleneck. If AI can help with so much of the heavy lifting, what becomes the bottleneck? Increasingly, it may be the willingness to act. The question becomes less, do I know enough? And more, am I willing to do something with what I can now know? The Wimp says, open quote, I don't know how, close quote. The Millionaire says, open quote, I don't know how yet. Let's find out, close quote. The Wimp says, open quote, what if I fail? Close quote. The Millionaire says, open quote, what is the downside and can I afford it? Close quote. The Wimp says, open quote, I'll think about it, close quote. The Millionaire says, open quote, I've thought about it, now let's test it, close quote. That is a profound change. Set everything up for the Millionaire. But there is another insight I have come to appreciate. You shouldn't rely on courage alone. Set everything up for the Millionaire. If taking action requires 20 complicated steps, the Wimp has 20 opportunities to intervene. Maybe tomorrow. I need to prepare more. I'll do it after lunch. I should research this a little more. Maybe this isn't the right time. Instead, design your environment so that the desired action is easy. Prepare the documents. Create the templates. Build the workflow. Automate what can be automated. Use AI to do the heavy lifting. Prepare the message. Open the website. Have the customer list ready. Have the payment system ready. Have the product ready. Then reduce the final action to something extraordinarily simple. Press the button. Send. Publish. Launch. Call. Submit. Ask. The Millionaire doesn't want to fight the Wimp 20 times. He wants to eliminate the opportunities for the Wimp to interfere. The button. I love the metaphor of the button because it represents the precise moment when thinking ends and action begins. Before the button, psychology, fear, doubt, uncertainty, courage, decision. After the button, reality. You get data, you get feedback, you get customers, or you don't. You make sales or you don't. The market responds. And now you have something much more valuable than speculation. You have evidence. From psychology to science. This leads to another important distinction. Before you begin, becoming successful can feel like a psychological problem. You don't know what will happen. You have to believe enough in the possibility to take the first step. You need courage. You need to overcome fear. But after you take the first few steps, something changes. You start getting data. Suppose you launch a product. You get 10 customers, then 20, then 40. You measure conversion rates. You measure customer acquisition. You measure revenue. You measure profit. You measure retention. You discover which activities produce results. At that point, the problem becomes much less psychological. It becomes increasingly scientific and mathematical. You can ask, what is my conversion rate? What happens if I double my traffic? What happens if I improve my offer by 20%? What happens if I automate this process? What happens if I acquire twice as many customers? You are no longer asking yourself to simply believe. You're measuring reality. You don't need $1 million tomorrow. This is an important distinction. You don't need to make $1 million next week. The objective is to get onto a millionaire trajectory. Suppose you begin selling something. At first, you have no evidence. Then you get your first customer, then another, then 10, then 50. You see revenue increasing. You see customer acquisition becoming repeatable. You see that your process works. Now you can begin asking mathematical questions about scaling. The important thing is not that you've already reached the destination, it's that the trajectory is working. You don't necessarily need to see the $1 million today. You need to see a path that can plausibly lead there. That is the difference between fantasy and entrepreneurship. Fantasy says, I'm going to be rich. Entrepreneurship says, this process is producing measurable results. How can I scale it? Courage starts the machine. This is where I see the 3 stages of the millionaire journey. 1. Courage. You make the initial decision. You overcome fear. You take the calculated risk. You press the button. 2. Science. You measure what happens. You study the data. You experiment. You improve. You discover what works. 3. Scaling. You take what works and multiply it. You create systems. You automate. You delegate. You use AI. You build workflows. You increase volume. And eventually, what began as an act of courage becomes a machine. The millionaire doesn't want to be courageous forever. He wants to be courageous long enough to build a machine that works. The millionaire's real superpower. This is why I don't think the defining characteristic of the millionaire is intelligence. It isn't even experience. And in the age of AI, it may increasingly be less about technical knowledge. The defining characteristic is agency. The belief that I can do something about this. If there isn't a way, I'll look for one. If I can't find one, I'll create one. If I don't know how, I'll learn. If I can't learn it quickly enough, I'll use AI. If I can't do everything myself, I'll find someone who can. If the first attempt fails, I'll learn from it. If the numbers work, I'll scale. That's the millionaire mentality. Every moment is an opportunity. The most powerful part of this philosophy is that you don't have to wait for some enormous life-changing opportunity. The choice appears constantly. Someone sends you an email. You can respond or hesitate. You have an idea. You can pursue it or dismiss it. You see an opportunity. You can investigate it or rationalize why it won't work. You want to ask someone for something. You can ask or remain silent. You want to launch something. You can launch or keep preparing. Every moment gives you another opportunity to exercise one identity or the other. The wimp gets stronger through avoidance. The millionaire gets stronger through action. And neither identity is permanently fixed. You can change the pattern. The millionaire is built through repetition. You don't become the millionaire by making one enormous courageous decision. You become the millionaire by repeatedly choosing the millionaire response. One calculated risk, then another. One uncomfortable conversation, then another. One experiment, then another. One launch, then another. Eventually, courage becomes less extraordinary. Action becomes normal. You stop asking, am I courageous? You simply become someone who acts. That is when the identity changes. AI and the millionaire. Artificial intelligence may therefore be one of the greatest tools ever created for the person who wants to exercise the millionaire identity. Not because AI makes everyone rich, it doesn't. And AI doesn't eliminate risk. It doesn't eliminate failure. It doesn't eliminate competition. But it can dramatically increase your ability to create ways forward. And that brings us back to, where there's a way, there's a will. AI can help you find the way. It can help you create the way. It can help you simplify the way. It can help you automate the way. It can help you scale the way. But there is still one thing AI cannot do for you. You have to decide to press the button. The choice. Perhaps this is ultimately what the Wimp and the Millionaire is about. Not money, not even entrepreneurship. It is about the choices we make between fear and agency. The Wimp asks, what if? The Millionaire asks, how? The Wimp waits for certainty. The Millionaire calculates the risk. The Wimp sees obstacles. The Millionaire looks for ways around them. The Wimp prepares forever. The Millionaire prepares to act. The Wimp wants the guarantee before taking the risk. The Millionaire understands that sometimes the evidence only appears after you take the risk. And when the system is finally prepared, when the workflow is built, when the AI is doing the heavy lifting, when the downside has been considered and the opportunity makes sense, there may be only one thing left to do. Press the button. That is the moment when the millionaire gets to express himself. And the beautiful thing is that we get that opportunity every single moment of every single day. The hairline reflex. There is a concept I call the hairline reflex. It is the idea that between recognizing an opportunity and taking action, there should be as little distance as possible. Imagine a single strand of hair. That is the gap I want between an idea and action. between seeing an opportunity and responding to it, between deciding what you want to do and actually doing it. The ultimate objective is to make that gap as thin as a strand of hair. Not because every decision should be impulsive, not because every opportunity should be pursued, and certainly not because calculated risk means reckless risk. Rather, the hairline reflex is about training yourself so thoroughly in the millionaire mindset that once you have made the decision that an action is worthwhile, hesitation almost disappears. You see, you decide, you act, and eventually it becomes almost automatic. That is the reflex. From thinking about action to becoming a person who acts, most people live with a substantial gap between intention and action. They have an idea, then they think about it. Then they think about thinking about it. They wonder whether it's the right time. They wonder what other people will think. They consider all the things that could go wrong. They do more research. They prepare. They postpone. And eventually the opportunity disappears. The hairline reflex is the opposite. You have an idea, act. You see an opportunity, investigate it immediately. You decide to contact someone, open the message and send it. You decide to create something, start creating it. You identify the next step, take the next step. The goal is to compress the distance between recognition and response. The wimp lives in the gap. This connects directly to the idea of the wimp and the millionaire. The wimp loves the gap. Why? Because the gap is where hesitation lives. The instant you recognize an opportunity, there is a brief moment before action. That moment is dangerous. The wimp enters. Maybe later. Are you sure? What if it doesn't work? Let's think about it. Maybe we should do more research. And sometimes those questions are useful, but often they are simply fear looking for a respectable disguise. The longer the gap becomes, the more opportunities the wimp has to take control. So the millionaire has a different objective. Make the gap tiny. The wimp needs time. The millionaire develops a reflex. Sure. The single strand of hair. Why call it the hairline reflex? Because a hair is extraordinarily thin. Imagine the distance between an idea and its execution being one single strand of hair. You have the thought, I should do this. And almost immediately, you do it. That's the ideal. Of course, real life isn't always like that. Sometimes you need to think. Sometimes you need to consult someone. Sometimes you need to calculate the risk. Sometimes you need to sleep on a major decision. The hairline reflex does not mean eliminating intelligent deliberation. It means eliminating unnecessary hesitation after the decision has been made. That distinction is crucial. The millionaire can think slowly before deciding, but once the decision is made, he acts quickly. The difference between impulse and reflex. The hairline reflex should not be confused with impulsiveness. An impulse says, I feel like doing this, so I'm going to do it. A reflex says, I have trained myself to respond appropriately when this situation occurs. A boxer doesn't need to have a philosophical discussion when a punch is coming toward him. He reacts. A musician doesn't calculate every finger movement while playing a familiar piece. She reacts. A skilled driver doesn't consciously reason through every tiny steering adjustment. He reacts. The behavior has been trained until it becomes automatic. That's what I want for the millionaire, not reckless impulsiveness, trained responsiveness. The millionaire reflex. Imagine you have spent months or years training yourself to recognize opportunities. You have defined your goals. You understand your risk tolerance. You have developed systems. You have learned how to evaluate opportunities. You have created workflows. You have prepared templates. You have AI tools ready. You have automated whatever can be automated. You know what your next action should be. Now an opportunity appears. There is no need to reinvent the process. You simply respond. See, decide, act. That is the millionaire reflex. And the more often you practice it, the more natural it becomes. The first few seconds matter. There is something psychologically important about the first few seconds after an intention appears. At that moment, nothing has happened yet. The action exists only as a possibility. Your brain can turn that possibility into reality or allow it to evaporate. Think about how often people say, I had a great idea, but I never did anything with it. The idea wasn't the problem. The gap was the problem. The longer the gap between the idea and the first action, the easier it is for the idea to die. So the hairline reflex says, don't let the idea remain an idea longer than necessary. Turn it into an action, even if the action is tiny. Write the first sentence, create the folder, send the message, buy the domain, make the phone call, create the prototype, ask the question, schedule the meeting. The objective is to convert thought into physical reality as quickly as intelligently possible. Shrinking the gap. At first, the gap may be enormous. You have an idea on Monday. You act on it 3 weeks later. Then perhaps you reduce the gap to 3 days. Then 1 day. Then an hour. Then 10 minutes. Then 1 minute. Then a few seconds. You are training yourself. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progressive compression. Every time you shorten the distance between intention and action, you strengthen the reflex. Eventually, the gap can become so small that action feels almost automatic. That's when something profound happens. You stop thinking of yourself as someone who wants to act. You become someone who acts. The hairline reflex and AI, artificial intelligence, makes this concept particularly interesting. AI can dramatically reduce the amount of work required between having an idea and executing it. You have an idea for a business. Ask AI to help you research it. You have an idea for a website. Ask AI to help you build it. You need an email. AI can draft it. You need a marketing plan. AI can help create one. You need to analyze an opportunity. AI can help you analyze the information. You need to automate a workflow. AI can help you design the workflow. In other words, AI can help make the path from idea to action shorter. And that means the hairline reflex becomes increasingly practical. The question is no longer, can I do all of this myself? It becomes, what is the next action, and how quickly can I take it? Set everything up for the hairline reflex. This brings us back to another principle. Set everything up for the millionaire. If you want fast action, don't wait until the opportunity appears to build your system. Build it beforehand. Create your templates. Create your checklists. Prepare your prompts. Set up your AI agents. Organize your files. Create your workflows. Automate repetitive tasks. Prepare your sales materials. Build your landing pages. Have your payment systems ready. Have your communication systems ready. Do the work in advance. Then, when the opportunity appears, the remaining action becomes extremely small. You don't have to build the machine. You just have to activate it. That's the button metaphor again. The millionaire prepares the machine so thoroughly that when the moment arrives, the action becomes almost effortless. The reflex becomes your identity. At first, you're deliberately practicing. You see an opportunity and tell yourself, act. Then you do it. Next time, you do it again. Eventually, you don't need to tell yourself, you simply respond. That is when the hairline reflex becomes part of your identity. You have trained yourself to associate opportunity with movement. Opportunity appears, you move. An idea appears, you move. A problem appears, you search for a solution. A possibility appears, you investigate it. Fear appears, you acknowledge it, but you don't automatically obey it. That is a profound psychological transformation. Becoming a warrior. This is where I would take the idea even further. There is a point where you stop being someone who is constantly trying to summon courage. You become someone whose default response is action. That's when you become a warrior. A warrior isn't someone who never feels fear. A warrior is someone who has trained himself to function despite fear. Fear may still be present, doubt may still appear, uncertainty may still exist. But the response has changed. Instead of fear, hesitation you develop, fear, assessment, action. Eventually, even that assessment becomes faster. And the gap gets thinner. Hairline thin. The millionaire doesn't hesitate forever. There is an important practical truth here. Nobody is going to respond instantly to every opportunity. Sometimes you will hesitate. Sometimes you will procrastinate. Sometimes you'll need to think for 5 minutes. Sometimes you'll need a day. That's human. The goal isn't to demand perfection from yourself. The goal is to continually reduce unnecessary hesitation. If you normally wait a week, try a day. If you normally wait a day, try an hour. If you normally wait an hour, try 10 minutes. If you normally wait 10 minutes, try 1 minute. You are training a reflex. And like any reflex, it gets faster with repetition. From courage to automaticity. This is perhaps the deepest point. At the beginning, courage requires conscious effort. You have to tell yourself, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it. Later, courage becomes a habit. Then it becomes a behavior. Eventually, it becomes part of your identity. You don't have to ask, am I being courageous? You simply respond in accordance with the person you've trained yourself to become. That is the ultimate objective of the hairline reflex. Courage becomes automatic, the millionaire trajectory. This is why I believe the hairline reflex can be viewed as an indicator of whether you're moving toward the millionaire identity. Not because instantly acting will magically make you wealthy. It won't. And not because every opportunity should be pursued. It shouldn't. The real signal is this: are you becoming increasingly capable of turning good decisions into immediate action? If yes, something important is changing. You're spending less time in hesitation. You're spending more time executing. You're generating more experiments. You're getting more feedback. You're discovering what works, and then you can begin measuring the results. At that point, your journey starts moving from psychology towards science. You can see the numbers. You can measure your customers.